French has this image of being easy and elegant. But then when you actually try to learn the language, then suddenly nothing sounds like it's spelled, grammar sounds overwhelming, and native speakers might as well be rapping because they talk that quick. French is not as easy as it seems. Number one, French pronunciation is a shock to beginners. I did not know where to start when it comes to reading the books. When I would read books, the pronunciation was off. When I first started, I didn't even know that you don't pronounce the whole word for the most part. The last letters of almost every word you do not pronounce. And for beginners, French beginners, that is a massive shock. And then what threw me off when I started to kind of grasp the pattern that you don't pronounce the end of words, I then learned that you do pronounce the end of the word if the next word or the next letter, is a vowel. That's what threw me off. Now, I know Spanish and Portuguese to a good level. This was never a problem in those two languages. So for me, this was brand new. I didn't know what was going on. But then honestly, once you start to get a grasp of it and start learning how it actually works, it's not as difficult as it sounds, and it's maybe, it depends for who, but for most people, it's quite quick to overcome that hurdle. Number two, spoken French is very different comparing to written French. The classic example, je ne sais pas. In French, spoken French that is, it's pronounced je sais pas. They just compress all the words into one. Instead of saying je ne sais, je pas. Easy. But when you first start to learn the language and you read je ne sais pas, when someone ends up saying je sais pas, you think it's a whole different word. You don't understand that they're saying je ne sais pas. And that is where the language becomes difficult, because when French people actually speak, it sounds very different from how it's written. But another thing that I learned is that once you learn a word, you can learn some sort of vocab, put it in your, your flashcard deck. You can start using it. And then when you hear someone speak, because I don't know if it's just me or if this is, I don't know if this is the case in English. I don't think it's the case in English, but for me, in French, I noticed that there's so many synonyms for basically all the different vocab. There's so many synonyms, and it throws you off because you know one way of saying it, and then someone ends up using another way. And I know obviously there's synonyms in English, but there's one, for the most part, from what I can remember right now, for the most part, there's one way that pretty much everyone says or everyone uses, but then there's another way that maybe older people would say, or people that have, more of an extended vocabulary. But in French, it seems like it doesn't matter. It seems like you can get two words and they're used as often as each other. Number three, French is grammar heavy. I would say the French language is very structured because you've got the gendered nouns, verb conjugations, agreements, multiple past tenses. Having said that though, you don't need to know everything. You don't need to know all of them. You don't want to sound like, they always use this phrase, you don't want to sound like Louis XIV. It's kind of like their version of, Henry VIII. You don't want to, or Shakespeare. You don't want to sound like someone from back in the day. Number four, this one kind of surprised me. Listening is harder than expected. For me, my impression of French before learning French was that French is a very slow and nonchalant language. That's not really the case. I know with Spanish, a lot of people say Spanish is a very fast language. In my opinion, French, I'm not saying French is faster than Spanish, but it's up there with Spanish. It is definitely up there because French is spoken very quickly by natives. But one thing I do notice with French is that there's more breaks in between the sentences to think. But there's also a lot of words, a lot of sentences. The way they speak, they will combine all the words into one word for the most part. But it's like a natural way of speaking. So it's something that you would have to get used to. Another thing is that French is full of reductions, so they don't finish a lot of their words. They will just cut it out. If the word is long, you know, French people, you know how they are, like nonchalant. Okay, I can't be asked saying this whole word, so I'm just gonna cut the second half of the word. So yeah, French is harder than people think. There's loads of things that may seem brand new to you when you first start learning, but once you start learning the different patterns and really learning how the language works, then it becomes much easier, trust me. But if French feels hard for you right now, then it doesn't mean that it's an impossible language to learn. It means that you're going through one of the hardest stages of learning a language, of learning French. And once you're past that stage, you're going to see happier days. In the next video, I'll explain why French is easier than what some people may think, and why most learners quit before it starts to click. So make sure you subscribe, comment, like the video, and stay posted for next week. Until next time.